particularly at the bottom of the table, and we will come to that. But it was also transfer deadline day. We're not going to go into all the ins and outs, and we're not going to try and keep this topical. But the big one is Marcus Rashford, which we've known about for a few days. There's been talk about him, going for his medical. Is it a gamble for Villa?
I don't think it's a gamble.
Sorry, Karen's here and Darren's here.
I was going to say, I was just going to turn away from you like this. You know what, Kels?
I love it if Wrighty went.
I didn't introduce him. We saw you.
Why are they here? Why are they here?
We were just going to do a whole hour and not mention you.
These two.
No, but all seriousness, with I think that it's a very good move for him, for a team. If we're going to be totally honest, I'll do better than the team he's just left. So you're going somewhere where hopefully, because they're playing better, you can go into a team that's playing well, with fans that are probably going to give you that boost, what you need. What you ideally don't want is to get there and still stutter like a Sterling at Arsenal. With the reputation that he comes with, you're hoping that he's going to go to Villa and he finds something what we've all been waiting for him to find. It's just great to see him smiling, get signing the deal, because I haven't seen him smile for such a long time. But that's what I'm hoping, that this is the thing that triggers him into getting himself back.
Even worse than not introducing you, before we actually hear from you, we're going to hear from Marcus Rashford on his move to Aston
Just
Villa.
wait a second, you two. Just wait a second.
Why Aston Villa?
I think they're a club that's in a good position in the league and they're pushing to get higher. Still in the Champions League. Good manager, ambitious manager, great talent in the squad. And, I've had to choose somewhere where I feel like my style of football is suited to and can help them and help me rediscover and improve as a player. Obviously, it's only short term that I'm here, so I want to make the most of my time here. And, the only way to do that is by using my attributes and my skill sets to help the team.
It's a really interesting move, this one. And Marcus Rashford has been through it at Manchester United in terms of trying to get back to that kind of form, and the amount of criticism that he's had at times for looking maybe uninterested in games. That's certainly been the perception of him. He goes now to Aston Villa with a point to prove, Karen, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a great move for him. Like, as Wrighty said, he's going to be playing Champions League football. As Wrighty said, it's an improved team. He's got a top manager that I think he's proven in this league. But there's still a kind of a question mark or a flip the coin of whether will he be able to do it. The investment has come in because I think, they've got 10 million now for playing Champions League last 16 and Duran's money. So look, it's over to Marcus now. You've got a good environment, a top manager, and you've got an opportunity. So, it is down to him now, really. But in terms of, he doesn't even have to move country either. So it's perfect for him. So you've got to go now. And, the club have said, come to us. This is your time.
The only thing is, in terms of the timing, if you're Marcus Rashford and you're thinking this is a new opportunity, it's a fresh start, probably can go out and play out wide in his preferred position, and then Ollie Watkins gets injured in the game against Wolves, comes off at half-time, and there might well be a case where he has to play through the middle. He thinks, I'm getting the move, I can go and have a fresh start, and then it's like, OK, but for the first couple of games, I'm going to be doing this. It's just really to emphasise the fact that the importance is him keeping it right in his head, isn't it?
I think so, and I think the psychology of the move is all important. I think if you just take it outside of football, that all of us have probably been at some stage or another in jobs where you're a bit demotivated, and you just go through the motions of just going in, doing what you have to, going home. Why should football be any different? And I look at some of the things that have been said about him. He's really done well when you think about this modern culture where players can answer and can be quite forceful with their answers. He's done quite well to be respectful, keep his counsel, speak at the right times and say the right things. And what struck me most about when he did an interview with a colleague, Henry Winter, pre-Christmas, is he said, I need a new challenge. All those people who are saying, and bear in mind, United had briefed at the time that they were willing to listen to offers for him. He said, maybe I do need a new challenge. All those people were saying he should go. He's given them what they want. And they still hammered him. Now, what strikes me about whether this will work is there is a precedent for players leaving Manchester United. Scott McTominay is at Napoli at the moment, scoring goals, top of the league in Italy. Jadon Sancho was characterised as being a negative influence, went to Dortmund, helped into the Champions League final, is now at Chelsea, holding down a regular first-team place in the Premier League side, not the Europa League side, or Conference League side, where they're beating Barrow 8-9-0. You know, he's in the serious team. And I think as far as Rashford is concerned, he's not gone to any team. He's gone to a team that is in the Champions League, in the FA Cup, chasing a top 4 place under a manager who looks at the details, very careful about the kind of characters he puts into his dressing room. So for me, I think there is every chance that it could be a good fit. He would not by a million miles be the first player who looked unhappy at Manchester United and went somewhere else and does well. As for Manchester United, it's a 3-4-3 formation that simply isn't working. 5 defeats at home in their last 6. And what was interesting about Rashford was that he said, I'm going to a place where it plays a system that suits me. That really did strike me.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about the change of manager, because Marcus Rashford, it's his boyhood club, as you say. He's been there in a time of change where managers have kind of turned over. Yeah. And as he's come through, it's been different messages. And a lot was made in terms of his inconsistency about maybe not having had a clear message and clear development path. Is that something that can change under a manager that, as Darren says, is known for being extremely detailed, extremely clear? Yeah,
but the thing is that what we know from Marcus is from the time he got into the team to this point, is probably this manager might have been the one that maybe gave him some coaching if everything was all hunky-dory in the camp. Because I think that with all the managers he's had, he's always just been put in just to play, not coaching about the position. We all thought he was going to be a centre forward. He's coming from the left. He could come from the right. I think that when you're that kind of forward, you should be able to play anywhere up the front. I don't think he's had a lot of coaching in respects of where you're meant to be, where you're meant to lay it off, what shape you're meant to take when the ball, all that sort of stuff. I don't think he's had. I think that if he was in a Pep's kind of like environment, he would be a different player in how he understands the game. I still feel that going somewhere like with Unai will give him that kind of coaching where we're gonna see the best out of him, because that's how he.
He's relentless in his detail.
In his detail,
You listen to Ollie Watkins and you're like, he's consistent.
Yeah.
You do tape, you do meetings, you do everything. So it probably is hopefully for Marcus the right guy to be like, make the runs. Like I'd tell Ollie, stay in the width of here, or to give me this, to give me that. Just real hard structure and kind of. I think
that is quite key, because you talk about precedent. If you look at the Villarreal teams that did so well in the Champions League under Unai Emery, there were lots of players that other clubs didn't want. Etienne Capoue, Juan Foyth, lots of players who were cast off from Premier League clubs who couldn't find a place for them in their squads. And I kind of wonder if that question was so good, because people forget that United have had something like 6 managers in the last 9 years. Yeah. So they've had lots of different philosophies, lots of different teammates, lots of different messages in the dressing room. And again, if you step outside of football in anyone's job, sometimes if you leave mentally, you've gone. It doesn't matter how good the next person who comes in next is. Once you've left psychologically, and I just feel for him, he said, I think maybe the worst thing he could have done was sign that last contract, because he's got that boyhood attachment everyone talks about. It put him on big wages. He'd earned that money with the season that he'd had previously, but maybe,
it's time, Darren. It's time, I think.
Yeah, and we'll see how it works out for Marcus Rashford. I think there's a lot of people who are wishing him well in his move to Aston Villa.
So just one bit of any other business, just to stress for people again, tomorrow will be the end of transfer deadline day. You'll have all sorts of business to cover then, and that will include Manchester United. But Marcus Rashford is obviously current news. Yeah. He's going to go to Aston Villa on loan. How do you feel about that?
A number of emotions. I think tinge of sadness thinking of Marcus Rashford, an 8-9-year-old Manchester United academy player, given a big contract a couple of years ago, having scored 30 goals and being sort of right at the top of his game on and off the pitch. And then obviously the deterioration in the last couple of years have been alarming, to the point now whereby, I mean, it's an absolute must that he has to get out of Manchester United and Old Trafford. And I feel sad saying that. I never thought that a few weeks ago, let alone months ago. I thought when Ruben Amorim came in, we would see the not resurgence of re-emergence of Marcus Rashford, but I thought we'd see sort of like a clean slate. It's got 10 times worse under Ruben Amorim for Marcus Rashford than it was under Erik ten Hag, in the sense that some of the things that have been said by his manager have been absolutely brutal, and he's only been with him 5 or 6 weeks, and they're a stain on his character. So he needs to get out. He needs the freedom away from Old Trafford. He needs to spend time at another club. And in terms of his move, he's going to a team that are far better than Manchester United at this moment in time. I mean, I watched the United game earlier. It didn't surprise me. It was awful. But he's going to a far better football team that are in the Champions League, that are in the FA Cup, that are in with a shout of getting into the Champions League again. And the most important thing for me is that I think he'll be playing under a world-class coach. That's the most important thing. And I think what Marcus Rashford needs at this moment in time is instruction. Ordinarily, you might say, I want to go out on the pitch, son, and enjoy it. That's not Unai Emery. It's not what Marcus Rashford needs. He needs real instruction and direction and discipline in his game. This is where I want you when the ball's here. This is where I want you when the ball's over this side. This is when I want you to run forward. This is how you link. This is how you play. And he's going to have 4 or 5 months of one of the best coaches in Europe to work with. Any distraction that he may have needs to go. Any sort of fallout that he may have with Manchester United and thoughts about what's happened at the club need to go. He needs to just go and play football and enjoy playing football in a really good team, a great club with a fantastic manager. And they're the big pluses, because he's going to a better team, a better group of players, and a better coach at this moment in time. That's not being critical of Ruben Amorim, but Unai Emery is one of the very best, and I think that's really important. So it might not be the sort of sexy move that maybe many thought could happen. Maybe Barcelona was mentioned at one point, but it's a really good, solid move for him. And what he now needs to go and do is not necessarily go and prove Manchester United wrong, but if he goes and scores 8 to 10 goals in the last 15, 16 games of the season, and he does well for Aston Villa, you're now starting then to look at Old Trafford again, with the fact that McTominay's left and excelled, and Sancho's gone to Chelsea and he's doing a lot better than he was at Old Trafford. He's starting to now look at the fact that is Old Trafford the problem? We know it has been a problem for players, but this will be further evidence of it. So, it's going to be a case of this is going to play out in the next few months of Marcus Rashford's left Old Trafford, all of a sudden he's fantastic again, or Marcus Rashford is the problem because he can't play football very well at Aston Villa. There'll be nothing in between. And there's a lot to be said. Look, he's had an enormous amount of coverage in the last few months, Marcus Rashford, in the last couple of years. But when you're taking on the government and achieving the things that he did all those years ago, when you're scoring 30 goals in a season for the most famous club in the world, the most written about club in the world, when you're getting the big bucks and you're getting the 5-year deal on huge money, it also comes with the huge criticism, the huge scrutiny. You can't escape that. And I've said this before, this happened with all the great players that have played at United and at other clubs as well. Like Mbappe now at Real Madrid, he's got the spotlight heavily on him all the time because he's signed for one of the greatest clubs, or one of the greatest clubs in the world and greatest clubs in Spain. And the scrutiny is higher than it will have been in Paris. So the fact of the matter is, there is an element of Marcus now just enjoying his football. I really want him to succeed at Aston Villa. I want him to go and score a ton of goals for them. I want him to get that smile back on his face and love his football again. We just talked about Lewis Skelly, haven't we? And how enjoyable it is to watch him. You watch Marcus in this last year or two and it's just not looked like it was enjoyable. It's looked like it was a chore. And football can't be like that. You know what I mean? Those dreams that you have as a kid to play football at the highest level, and all of a sudden it just fades away like you wouldn't believe. And it's just, no, get that back, get that love and that hunger and that fight and that enjoyment back in your game. And then let's hope he can do really well for Aston Villa. Let's hope he can do really well for himself, because that works actually for Marcus Rashford, and it also works for United in that they'll probably then either decide they want to sell him in the summer, which I think would be a shame, or they can sell him somewhere else. So, look, I think it's the right move for both parties, and I think it's the right move in the sense that if he went to Barcelona, you'd be sort of, there'd be a lot of glare and a lot of it. I think he's going to a solid dressing room, a solid club, a fantastic manager, and I think that's what he needs now, solid people around him.
Well, really good luck to him.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gary,
Thank
and you'll
you.
be back tomorrow with much, much more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just got then is that AC Milan are in talks with João Felix. It's possibly going to be a loan with an obligation to buy. João Felix, incidentally, he's in Milan because he watched the Milan derby yesterday. So that obviously was a big indication that something might happen Anything else happens, we will let you know. Right, let's move on to Manchester United, because it's been a turbulent time for Ruben Amorim since he arrived, hasn't it? Another loss at home yesterday. Marcus Rashford has gone to Aston Villa, but will there be any incomings? Dave, it appears that a move for Matisse Tell is going to be unlikely, though.
I think when you look at Manchester United, especially in the game against Crystal Palace yesterday, a lack of options up front was a big thing. We saw Amorim testing things out. Kobbie Mainoo was a bit of a false nine in there, which probably worked for the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game, and then Palace adapted. I think a number 9 is important, but then you look at the targets that Man United might go for in the summer, that feels like a better place for United to act. But getting a loan deal, I think, is vitally important, especially with Marcus Rashford going out. United only had 2 shots on target yesterday. That's not enough for a home game at Old Trafford for United's own high standards over the years, not this season, of course. But I do think it's a position, Tell's a player that could play all across the front line as well, that's adaptable, that's done some of his, his football playing in those sort of inside forward positions, exactly how Amorim's system's set up. So for me, it'd be a good loan move. Option to buy would be good, but the reports yesterday were that Bayern didn't want an option to buy and they wanted a permanent transfer. So it's going to be a tough one, I think, for United to get over the line.
It's interesting, isn't it? He's one of the hottest young forward prospects, really, around in Europe, and yet Bayern seem happy to let him go. Why is that? And do you think he would fit in nicely to Man United's forward options?
I think he would. That's the first thing. But I think, actually, if you track the whole window, if you look at the start, Bayern were adamant. He's our player. He's not going anywhere. And Tell wanted to fight for his place. 2 things changed. The first thing changed was that Bayern, I think, realised what kind of market there might be for him in terms of a permanent transfer. They've made that plain. They've said if big offers come in, for example, the Tottenham one, we have to really think about it. We have to think about what revenue we can generate. The second thing that changed is that Tell has barely played since the turn of the year, and I think he was hoping he would get more opportunities, but he's not quite the wide player that fits what Kompany wants to do at Bayern. He likes the fullbacks to underlap and he likes his wingers to stay wide. Tell doesn't really do that, and Tell's options in the middle are non-existent because Harry Kane's there. So I think he's been pushing for a move, but Bayern only really want to make that happen if they can get some guaranteed cash in for him.
OK, we're going to talk more about Matisse Tell actually later in the show. He possibly could be of interest to another Premier League side as well. Now, yesterday, Ruben Amorim benched Joshua Zirkzee and Rasmus Højlund, and he started Kobbie Mainoo up front. Was he hinting to the board that he needs a striker?
No. The things are not like that. Today we choose to play with Kobbie to use the characteristics of Kobbie. It's nothing against Rasmus or Josh, and sometimes the team scores goals by creating situations to use the right characteristics, and not to. It doesn't mean if you play with 2 strikers you are going to score more goals.
More breaking news coming in to us, and this involves Brighton, because they've now confirmed that Benicio Baker-Boitley has joined Millwall. He's a 21-year-old winger. He was on loan at Port Vale earlier this season, but he returned to Brighton this month. He made 6 first-team appearances for Albion, 5 of which came in the Premier League. He's Millwall's 6th signing of the window. Right, let's get back on to Manchester United then, and that very interesting quote that we heard there from Ruben Amorim. What do you think, Flex? Do you think that he is saying that to the board? It's a very interesting move, that, isn't it?
And it's bold
all
as well.
people to start Kobbie Mainoo up front.
It didn't make a lot of sense to me, if I'm honest. I think it puzzled a lot of Manchester United fans when the team sheet came out. They said, oh, Kobbie Mainoo's in there, great. Oh, Garnacho's in there, great. Oh, Ahmad's in there, great. Oh, Bruno's playing. Who's the centre forward? So it being Kobbie Mainoo after him playing in a 10 against RB Bucharest on the Thursday night, it just didn't seem like the right option. And of course, if you make that decision, you lose 2-0 and you don't have many shots on goal, you have to live by that decision. But you do have to think of a broader picture. The pushback from many, neutrals and United fans would probably be, you look at Rasmus Højlund this year, you look at Joshua Zirkzee this year, and there's not much quality coming from either of those two as well. And this is Amorim trying different solutions to the problems that Man United have had since he's got there, which is they can't score goals. We're not attacking, we're not creating chances as frequently as he would like. and Dave alluded to it a little bit earlier, that the main nine of the future of Manchester United is probably something Manchester United want to do in the summer. But you've let Anthony go. You've now let Marcus Rashford go in a team that's struggling. Xerxes and Højlund are struggling. Manchester United have to find a forward, in my opinion, in the remaining hours of today. Because just for bodies and, of course, the quality. So it was a bold move by Ruben Amorim. I think it can come across as, not showing faith in Rasmus Højlund and Xerxes. They've been interchanging in terms of starts ever since the beginning of the season and since Ruben Amorim's got there. So there's clearly an issue. He hasn't made his mind up on which one he wants to stay with and push forward, which would suggest that neither really fit his style. But for me, it was still a puzzling situation, one that I don't think we'll see Kobbie Mainoo up front again for Manchester United anytime soon. But I think, a message to the board to say, get me a striker.
I think it's worth trying. I think that's the period Man United are in right now. They're in mid-table. Out of the relegation battle, you'd probably say. They're just going to be sitting in and around there. Amorim did a lot of these things at Sporting before Gyökeres. There was a lot of fluidity in his forward line. So I'm not against the idea of trying that and seeing if it works this season. But then you also go to Mainoo's performance on Thursday night. It was brilliant. Was the first Manchester United midfielder to be involved in a goal and an assist in the same game. The youngest at the club in the history of the football club as well. There's a lot of quality there. I like how he linked the play. I like how he received into feet. You can start to see what Amorim's trying to do, but I do think a forward is needed, and that's something we're going to look at, in the show very, very shortly in terms of what Man United could do before the end of the window. There's got to be a body in there, as you mentioned. Anthony out, Rashford out. Someone's got to come in.
All right, let's get the latest from Aston Villa, shall we? We mentioned Marcus Rashford in the door, yes.
Welcome back to Deadline Day. Now it is time to talk about Manchester United and their need for a forward. As I mentioned before, only 2 shots on target against Crystal Palace. United have let both Anthony and Marcus Rashford leave the club. They need to buy a forward. So we're looking at 3 players that Manchester United have been linked with in the window. Leon Bailey from Aston Villa, Christopher Nkunku at Chelsea and Matthias Tel at Bayern Munich. Let's start with Leon Bailey, because this one for me is quite an interesting one. Of course, most of the time we've seen him in the Premier League. He's been playing on the right wing. Thought he made a pretty decent impact at the weekend against Wolves. There was a 10-15 minute period where Villa were in the ascendancy and Leon Bailey was very aggressive, driving, dribbling. But I was actually thinking about him as a footballer, and back in the Bundesliga for Bayer Leverkusen, he actually played as a wing-back around 40 times, both on the right-hand side and the left-hand side. For me, this move could be really interesting. Not only could he play the 3 forward positions across that front line, but both wing-back positions. In terms of statistics, out of the 3 players we're looking at right now, he's played the most minutes in the last 3 seasons and made the most appearances. Of course, 15 goals and 15 assists. Last season, 10 goals and 9 assists in the Premier League. A very, very good record, but a player that could play multiple positions, a loan deal could be a great option for Manchester United. Moving on to Christopher Nkunku, another player that's excelled when playing in a system that builds with a back 3. For RB Leipzig, for me, his best football came when he played as a number 9 with 2 attacking midfielders behind him. The big issue with Nkunku has been his injury record. He's played less than 500 minutes in his 2 seasons in the Premier League for Chelsea. That is a big concern. But when he's on the pitch, he's been doing some damage in terms of the 21 goals and the 5 assists over the last 3 seasons in league football, of course. He's a player that would help Manchester United's forward line, would add some creativity in there with his ability to assist. Again, back in the Bundesliga one year, he had the top assists in Europe for RB Leipzig. But a player that I think is a little bit of a worry. If Manchester United were to move for Christopher Nkunku, it would have to be a loan deal for me. The permanent deal would be far too risky. And finally, Tel. Obviously, he's been the talk of the transfer window, as Kevin was saying before. Bayern Munich have realised they've got a big asset here. Man United have come in with a loan bid with an option to buy that Bayern Munich have rejected. In terms of Matthias Tel, of course, we've got to look at those 60 appearances. He's only played 1,723 minutes in club football in the league. That is a little bit of a concern. But actually, if we break those numbers down, the 12 goals and 6 assists is a pretty decent record. Around 96 minutes per goal and assist in the Bundesliga so far. He's a player that could play all across the front line for Manchester United. And if we think around Europe, Lookman is a perfect example of a player that Matthias Tel could build his career around. A player that plays in a system of 3-4-3, similar to Manchester United, that very much is a goal-scoring inside forward. For me, Tel has got to be a permanent deal if Manchester United are looking to sign anyone across the window. In sort of priority order, I think Tel number 1, Bailey number 2, and Christopher Nkunku number 3. That's what I'd go for if I were Manchester United.